sound speeds. And this is a friendly warning to you. This is going to be a loud episode. Now, I'm still going to level this episode to negative 16 LUFS, but you might want to have your hand on the volume control just to be on the safe side and ride it a little bit lower than you normally would. Why? Well, because I am curious about something after watching episode 339 of the Bandrew Says podcast, hosted by Bandrew Scott of the Podcast's YouTube channel. This episode was dated February 19th, 2023, and in that video...
This is measuring 1 minute of audio from 3 different shows. AI.cooking. The integrated loudness is minus 15.8 LUFS. Loudness units full scale. BSP. The integrated loudness, it is minus 15 LUFS. No agenda. The integrated loudness, minus 9.5 LUFS. That is insanity in terms of loudness. Some people fight against it, but there is a generally accepted practice of aiming for negative 16 LUFS for a stereo podcast. No agenda is just in a different stratosphere in terms of loudness. And to demonstrate this, I actually have the waveforms. The first show is No Agenda. The second show is AI.cooking. The third show is BSP. If you look at AI.cooking and the BSP, there are plenty of dynamics. There are loud parts, there are quiet parts. Plenty of dynamics, plenty of differentiation between those two. Then, when you look at No Agenda, this looks like a dubstep track.
Now, after watching that, Bandrew has me wondering, is it possible to level something to 0 dB LUFS? Well, in this video, we're going to jump into post-processing, and we're going to see if we can accomplish this. Here we are in Reaper, my DAW of choice. Now, the very first thing we're going to do here is open up a clip that I recorded, and then I completely eliminated the background noise and did nothing else to it. So for some reason, Reaper always adds a little tail to it. And yes, if you're a Reaper maniac and you know that you can go to Options, Preferences, and then Audio Render, and there is no tail length right there. And then if you go to Render, I have gone into Render and I have eliminated the tail. And I do have it set to custom time range, but for whatever reason, it still, every time it renders, it still adds a 1 second tail to it. That's aside. I know that if you're a Reaper maniac, you're going to end up telling me that you should know how to correct that. And I've done everything you're supposed to. It still does it anyway. So anyway, let's go ahead into JS Audio Statistics and look at what these levels are. Now, I want you to pay attention to this one right here. I set the level to peak at around negative 12 dB. I usually record it pretty hot. And then on top of that, this is the loudness, the average loudness here. So keep an eye on that as well. That will be much lower than the negative 12-ish peak. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, the reason I put those little gaps in there is because I want to hear what happens in the dead areas. Now, when you level something, it's basically averaging out all the levels to a certain volume level. Now, that means the loud areas, the quiet areas, it's going to kind of average it all together, and there's going to be more loud areas because you're speaking through the whole thing. If it was like 20 minutes of quiet and then you say one thing, the whole audio is going to probably be a lot louder if you level match it to something that's a lot higher. But for our purposes today, we're basically going to have this try to be a peak, I'm sorry, not a peak, an RMS level as close to 0 dB as we can actually get it. So the very first thing we're going to do is go over here and we're going to do item processing and we're going to normalize it to RMS. And notice I've already gone in here and selected RMS because it's normally set to LUFS, but we're going to set it to RMS 0 dB. I'm going to hit OK. Now these waves have now squared off quite a bit. They're very loud. There's still some areas that are quiet, but start to ride your volume level because here we go. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exact. Okay, that totally threw me. That just blasted my ears. I should have taken my own advice on that one. Okay, so this is plus 31.7 dB is what it brought its processing up to when I did that. Okay, so here we go. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to tell you right now. Looking at the RMS level, 0.15, but then the peak level is 20.47. So because we're recording, or rather we're editing in 32-bit floating point, it can be a positive dB number, no problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and add a, well, we could do a master limiter. Let's try that first. We're going to set our master limiter to 0 dB, and we're going to look ahead a full second. Do an attack as small as possible, a release instantaneously, limit dB, let's go 0. And then a reduction, let's not do a reduction at all. Let's just see what happens. And what we're going to have to do is, well, let's try it. Oh, okay. So this isn't going to work because it's basically limited everything below 0 dB. So let's, what did we do wrong? What did I do wrong? I limited this entire thing to the point where there's no level anymore. I don't know what I did here. Look ahead. Let's try lowering that. No? Let's try threshold. No? Well, what are you doing? All right, reset this thing. This is an audio. Okay, you're happy there. This is an audio sample. Okay, so let's set our threshold to, let's set it to 0. This is an audio sample. Maybe that was what it was. 0 dB. Play. Pull. Where I am intentionally leaving. Okay, it doesn't like that quick of an attack, apparently. Its attack is so quick. So let's try right there. See if that helps it. Oops, come on now, stop. Pull. Where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Now, I'm not overly thrilled by that because you can hear the background noise level is still quiet. So if we watch this meter right here, let's go ahead and reset it back to factory specs. Pull. Where I am intentionally leaving. All right, so our RMS level is way back down. So we have set our peak now. So let's go ahead and remove that master limiter right there. And we're not going to use that. Instead, let's try compression. We're going to lower the pre-comp, the attack, the release. Actually, let's set our threshold all the way at the minimum. So anything above negative infinity is going to have all these settings on there. We don't need a weird knee. Let's go ahead and set our infinity to 1. Knee size 0 dB. Let's eliminate high pass. That should be fine. Now this is going to be where it starts to sound bad. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0. So we're back to 20. Let's, oh, we didn't even enable it. We did the classic bypass your processing and then see what happens. Brilliant. This is an audio sample. Okay, you could hear the background noise that was zeroed out. It was not there. Now suddenly it's blasting up between the audio clips that I'm speaking, which is great. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, so right here we're seeing a negative 2.97 peak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and we're going to set this to 2.97. We're going to add that on the master bus. So when we do that, it's going to add 2.97 to this, and then we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and render this now, and I'm going to go into, actually, let's go over here. 0dB, where's that folder? 0dB, 0 LUFS, audio processing right there. Okay, so here we are. We're going to call this 1 RMS comp. That's going to be our RMS comp. Now I'm going to, again, on the output, I'm going to process this, not for LUFS. I'm going to process it to RMS at 0 dB with a brick wall limiter peaking at plus 0 dB. Not negative anything, it's plus 0. So that should be pretty aggressive. No tail. Okay. And watch, it's going to render out a tail again. You see that little bitty gap right there? It's going to be big when we look at the file again. So let's go ahead and hit render and see what happens. Wow, that looks pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and remove this. Completely start over again. Insert audio clip. Now we're going to insert 1 RMS comp, and we're going to listen to that in its raw form. You see how it added the tail at the end? I hate that. I don't like that at all. Stop doing the tails for whatever reason. But you notice at the very beginning, the audio clip that was completely quiet at the beginning, that's the noise level. That's the background noise, and that's when I started talking. So let's go ahead and actually take the tail completely down, and we're going to hard cut it right there. So we should be good. All right, so let's listen to this thing now. Whoa, that was a weird looking line. Look at this. That is like a waveform punished. It hates that right there. Okay, so let's try this and see what it sounds like. But first, I'm going to turn on JS Audio Statistics so that way we can get an idea. Oops, wrong one. We can get an idea of what it looks like. And yeah, we're going to set this back down to 0. So that way it's not going to change our sound at all. That's 0 dB. Everything is good now. Okay, so let's listen to it and watch these levels once more. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, so the dynamic range is squashed to like a line, but still our RMS loudness is negative 9.1. So I'll tell you what, let's repeat what we just did and see if we can, we'll see what happens if we multiply the same thing times 2. Attack, release, no weird knee, infinity to 1 ratio, minimize the threshold. Let's see if we just do the same thing again. See what happens. And actually, we're going to put RMS size down to 1 millisecond. That way, it's probably going to sound really bad at this point. We're going to limit the output. The audio quality is going to be terrible. It's going to be really bad because what it's probably going to sound like it's modulated because RMS size being that low. Yeah. Okay, so let's try listening to this thing. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words. Okay, so negative 10.03. Oh, you know what we should do? We should go ahead and every time we bring this back in, we should reprocess it for RMS level 0. Oh, there you go. That's a square. Everything is a block. Oh, yes. And this is like that punished, what is this? What does this sound like? Well, it sounds like a helicopter. Okay. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, it peaks at negative 9.04 again. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to set 9.04 as our output level, enter, and yes, I'm pleased with this. So I'm going to, again, re-render. This time we're going to call it to sequel. And again, we're going to process everything just the same way as we did before in the same folder. And let's hit render. Yes, that's going to be great. So let's go ahead and exit out of there, exit out of there. We're going to set this back to 0 dB. We're going to eliminate this track. We're going to then bring in the brand new one, which is to SQL. There's that tail again. I hate it. I hate that you're doing this to me, Reaper. You always do it. Always have that little tail, and I never want it. So let's go ahead and eliminate that. And let's listen. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. Okay, so we're still averaging around negative 8.46 LUFS. That's only 1 dB. Well, I mean, okay. We're doing a lot of very destructive processing here. Not like No Agenda where they just process everything and compress it like crazy and do the post-processing that they do. I am intentionally trying to destroy the waveforms by doing this, to try to eliminate all the dynamic range and squash everything to a straight line. So I tell you what, at this point, let's try opening up, let's do iZotope RX, and we're going to open file to the SQL. Okay. So if I were to click on this entire thing, highlight the whole thing, go to waveform stats, it says momentary loudness, -4. Maximum short-term loudness, -8. Well, this tells me that I should probably add 6.4 dB. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add 6.4, and we're going to render that. That square looks nice and healthy, doesn't it? That's beautiful. So there you go. Peak is at 0.0 LUFS and maximum short-term loudness at -1.6. This is going to sound lovely. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. Okay. What more could we do? Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave the waveform stat up there for a second. Let's see. We added before. I mean, we're at 0.0 LUFS. Let me try something here. I'm going to add 1.6. If I add 1.6 to this, it should go to there, render. Okay, so now the short term, but now we're peaking. So what I'm going to do now is I got to brick wall limit that. Tell you what, this is 32-bit floating point right there, I believe. So let's go ahead and render this. And we're going to see what happens if we export this. Yeah, let's do that. 32-bit floating point. And we're going to render it to 3 iZotope. Okay, so now we're going to see exactly what it is. I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Brilliant. Okay, so let's go ahead and reopen this file in Reaper, and we're going to look at what it looks like now. iZotope. Okay, wow. And we have our tail again. I'm going to eliminate the tail because I hate them. No tail. Hashtag no tail. I can't stand those things. Oh, yeah. Look at that waveform. That is square. This thing. Okay. I have a video on this channel about how you do extreme compression and it basically lowers the bit rate. This is a great example of that. You can see that this is basically like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, these are all. I mean, there's only like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like 4-bit audio at this point. It's compressed to the point where it's like 4-bit audio. Now, if, in fairness, if we wanted to render this thing out, or would we go into our compressor right here, if we went down to RMS size of like 0.1 minimal, oh, it would sound completely modulated. But and I'll show you that real quick just to give you an idea of if I leave everything basically the way it is. Let's minimize this down to 0.01. You're going to hear it's going to sound like nothing you recognize. This is an audio sample where oh, that's weird. It shouldn't be recognizable. It's let's go ahead and set everything back to the way it was. Choom. Maybe that's what it was, is I didn't actually set that. I didn't, that's exactly what it was. Okay. So let's make sure this is, okay, 0 dB. So now all of our settings, no weird knee. Okay, that should be good. So when we listen to this now, it's going to be very aggressive with all this processing and wrangling it back down, and it should have an RMS size of 0.01 milliseconds, which is... This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving. Remember, the more compression you do, the more it's basically lowering the bit rate. And so we're approaching very quickly 2-bit audio. So I think this is going to be lovely. As a matter of fact, should I pre-process it again? Do the normalize? Yeah, I should. Didn't do anything. It only raised up barely. Okay. We're going to go ahead and see what happens if we play it one more time. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly... Oh, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Look at this. Negative 25.26. RMS and peak. This is an audio sample where I am... Friends, this is now a straight line. So if I were to come over here and basically add that exact amount, 25.26. Oh, I'm excited because this is going to now be peaking at 0 dB, and it's going to be a 0 dB RMS. Let's call this the end, because hopefully it will be. And at this point, I'm not going to do any more processing to it. I don't want it to change and render out anything at the end there. Let's go ahead and turn off the tail and let's see if that saves it now. So let's see, back there, audio processing, hit render. Oh, that's a thing of beauty. Look at that. I hate that tail right there. Look at that tail. So annoying. Okay, so I'm going to close this up and we're going to listen to the end. But first, we have to change this back to 0 dB. You thought I was going to forget, didn't you? So that is now 0 dB. I'm going to remove this tail because I hate them. It's delaying the inevitable, I know, but right there. Man, look at all the squares. All the squares. This, my friends, is 1-bit audio. That is the way this is. This is bit 0. This is 1. If it is on, it is at 1. So this is what we have achieved. We have done so much compression, so much limiting that we have achieved 1-bit audio. Here we go. I cannot wait. I'm going to turn on JS Audio Statistics and we're going to look. I so want to see 0 and 0 right there. Please, please, please. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. You know, I think that achieving that, we're less than 1/10 of a dB to 0 dB. I'm going to call that a win right there. I mean, I could continue to tweak this thing out. I could go over here. Let's try it one more time. We're going to do it just because we can do it really fast. 0.1. We're going to add actually 0.8, 0.08. We're going to add that, enter, and we're going to render this file the way it is. We're going to call it we're going to do our simple, what post people do, version 2. We're going to call it the end version 2. We're going to make sure processing is turned completely off, and we're going to render the file right there. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. It's like that thing is terrible. It's Nightmare Central. Okay, so I'm going to remove this. We're going to insert media. We're going to call this the end version 2 right over here. And we're going to completely, let's turn this on. Oops, let's turn on our, there it is. Okay, we're going to turn that on. We're going to turn this back down to 0. So now it is reset. So hopefully, there's the tail. There's the tail. We got to get rid of the tail. It gets longer every single time, if you notice, because it renders out a 1-second tail. And I'm still happy to have a 0 or rather 1-bit audio. So right over here. And let's now look and see if we are going to achieve greatness with 0 dB peak and loudness. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps between the words in the dialogue. And we're going to see exactly how close to 0 dB LUFS we can get this. This is an audio sample. You know what? That's it right there. It's basically there. That little 0.02 at the end is a bit of silence that's someplace in there, probably at the very beginning. Yeah, it's the fade in right there. If I were to eliminate that, I bet you it goes away. Oh, it's been because I've rendered this thing the whole time. So if I were to basically clip it right there at the very beginning and go delete, remove this tail, go all the way there, that's probably what it is right there. If I were to now delete this. This is an audio sample where I am intentionally leaving little gaps. So I am thrilled with our results. That was a lot of fun to me. I mean, theoretically, you could say you could add like 1 more hundredth of a dB and bring that up to 0 dB, but guess what? You're never going to hear that. And I call this a win because we are technically not clipping our audio. It is still not clipped. So it's 0 dB LUFS, but it's not clipped. So thank you for tuning into this episode of Sound Speeds. Be sure to tune in the future for more interesting things that you want to do in your podcast. And of course, as always, sound advice. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.